An empowering mission statement is not a to-do to be checked off. To be empowering, it has to become a living document, part of our very nature, so that the criteria we've put into it are also into us, into the way we live our lives day by day. Another individual shared this experience. A short time after I wrote my personal mission statement, my wife and I had a falling out with some really close friends of ours. We didn't really know why it happened. All we knew was that it was something that had come over a matter of time, and suddenly there was some straw that broke the camel's back and we were no longer friends. We lived with the pain of this for 2 months. We would be in situations where we were with other friends and we would not even talk to each other. My wife and I would lie in bed and talk about it. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about my friends and how I could bridge this gap that was between us. One night I was driving home and it suddenly dawned on me, is the way that I have handled this whole scenario from start to finish in harmony with my mission as an individual, as a friend? Part of my mission deals with learning some of the lessons of life and being able to understand and mature through them so that I can teach them to others, not only to my family, but also to friends and whoever else might have the same problem at some point in their lives. I suddenly realized that the way I had acted was not consistent with my mission, and in that instant, I know this might sound strange, I was liberated from the guilt and the pain. I knew I needed to really understand this whole experience and learn from it, what had gone wrong, how it had happened, and then to make reconciliation. I was able at that point to take my mission and overlay it onto the problem and say, this is what my mission is, and this is how I choose to handle this situation. I went home and outlined in my mind how I would bridge the gulf, and at that point my mission became real to me. I went to my friend and told him how deeply sorry I was about the whole situation and how painful it had been for my wife and me. I felt humble and teachable. I really deeply wanted to understand how he felt and what had gone wrong. At that point, he was softened and he was willing to talk about what he felt had been the problem and how he and his wife might have been wrong. We were able to communicate deeply and work things out. Then we got together with our wives and they were able to have a similar experience. That was such a liberating experience. I was even grateful for the pain. And it was powerful for me to realize how important and how real a mission statement can be. It was alive at that point. It was a living document. From that experience, I've been able to take other experiences in different roles and responsibilities and say, is this really part of my mission? And this whole thing, this whole notion of quadrant 2 time management and putting first things first has come to life. I have been able to make this document almost a transparent overlay, to put it over any situation and decide how I choose to respond. Most people who feel empowered by their mission statement find that there seems to be some point at which their statement lives. They own it. It's theirs. The vital connection is made between the mission and the moment in life. Then, with nurturing and continuing cultivation, the mission statement becomes the primary factor that influences every moment of choice. Creating and living an empowering mission statement has a significant impact on the way we spend our time. When we talk about time management, it seems ridiculous to worry about speed before direction, about saving minutes when we may be wasting years. Vision is the fundamental force that drives everything else in our lives. It impassions us with a sense of the unique contribution that's ours to make. It empowers us to put first things first, compasses ahead of clocks, people ahead of schedules and things. Creating and integrating an empowering personal mission statement is one of the most important quadrant 2 investments we can make. And as we live, love, and learn with greater meaning in our lives, we begin to realize that perhaps the most important legacy we can leave is vision. What our children and others see of themselves and of their future has a profound effect on quality of life for us all. Quadrant 2 goals to cultivate the passion of vision. Set quadrant 2 time each week to cultivate a rich inner life, to nurture a quiet place within yourself where you can connect with your own inner compass. Schedule a personal retreat to go through the mission statement workshop, Appendix A, and write a personal mission statement. Schedule time to evaluate and revise your current mission statement. Commit your mission statement to memory. Set a daily sharpen the saw goal to visualize yourself living your mission statement. Review your mission statement each week before you begin to organize. Keep a daily journal record of how your experiences, your choices, and your decisions are affected by your personal mission statement. Read mission statements written by other people throughout history. Consider the impact of these statements on their lives and on society. Help your children or others whose lives you touch to create their own mission statements. Nurture vision in others. Probably the deepest and most often expressed pain we hear in the area of time management comes from imbalance. Many people who go through the mission statement experience come to a stark and painful awareness of important areas of their lives they've been neglecting. They realize they've invested tremendous time and energy in one area of their lives, such as business, athletics, or community service, at the expense of other vital areas such as health, family, or friends. Others are more aware of their various roles, but they feel torn between them. Their roles seem to be in constant conflict and competition for their limited time and attention. Balance isn't either or, it's and. We frequently hear comments like this: I want to provide for my family and be successful in my career, but my company thinks I'm serious about advancement unless I get to the office early and work late and on weekends. By the time I get home, I feel exhausted. I have more work to do and no energy or time to give to my family. But they need me. There are bikes to fix, stories to read, homework assignments to help with, things to talk over, and I need them. What is quality of life if it isn't spending time with the people you love most? And that doesn't even get into my other roles. I want to be a good neighbor, I want to help in the community, and I need some time for myself to exercise, to read, time just to think once in a while. I'm being pulled in so many directions, and they're all important. How can I possibly do it all? The most frequently mentioned conflict is between work and family roles. The most often expressed pain is in relationships and lack of personal development. People are saying, I can't run fast enough to touch all the bases in my life every day. Some important things in my life just aren't getting done. The faster I run, the more out of balance I feel. If you've seen the movie The Karate Kid, you may remember the scene at the ocean where the elderly Miyagi sends his young student Daniel out into the pounding surf. Learn balance, he calls. Time after time, as the boy struggles against the crashing waves, he's knocked off his feet. Finally, he turns to see his mentor in the distance, poised atop a single post. From this position, Miyagi executes the intricate movements of the crane technique, demonstrating perfect balance as he easily shifts midair between one foot and the other. We may hear our own inner voice telling us, learn balance, but for the most part, many of us feel like Daniel out in the pounding surf, getting knocked off our feet by powerful forces that seem to come at us from every direction. Obviously, balance is a true north principle. We see manifestations of it all around us: the balance of nature, balance of trade, balance of power, well-balanced meals. As with any principle, one of the most powerful witnesses of its reality is the consequence of living with its opposite, imbalance, an inner ear infection that causes us to lose our balance, being knocked off our feet in a basketball game, or just living with the discomfort of an out-of-balance life validate the reality and importance of the principle. But how do we nurture balance in our lives? Is it simply a matter of running between bases fast enough to touch them all every day? Or is there some other, more effective way to see it that creates a powerful impact on the results we're getting in our lives? Take a moment and look back at the roles you listed when we went through the Quadrant 2 organizing process. How do you see these roles? Many of us in the Western world are programmed from an early age to see them as separate compartments of life. We go to different classes in school. We have separate subjects. We have separate textbooks. We get an A in biology and a C in history, and it never crosses our mind that there's any relationship between the two. We see our role at work as completely separate from our role at home, and neither as having much to do with other roles, such as personal development or community service. As a result, we think in terms of either or. We can focus either on one role or another. This compartmentalization translates into our character. What we are at work is somehow separate from what we are at home. What we do in our private life is detached from what we do in our public life. In The Unschooled Mind, Howard Gardner shows the impact of compartmentalized thinking. People with advanced academic degrees perform well as long as they work in the way they were trained, but give them a test where you change the situation or the circumstance and they not only do worse, they flunk. They can't do it. They can't think across borders. The way we see the problem is the problem. This compartmentalization is based on illusion, and to try to live the illusion is incredibly strenuous. In reality, these roles are parts of a highly interrelated whole, a living ecosystem in which each part impacts every other part. As Gandhi observed, one man cannot do right in one department of life whilst he is occupied in doing wrong in any other department. Life is one indivisible whole. This more holistic paradigm of balance is foundational to Eastern wisdom, where balance is considered essential to life and health. As Chinese-trained physician Dr. David Eisenberg observes, we, in the Western world, invented the notion that biology and physics and psychology and psychiatry are separate. If we want to deal with health, and we're looking only at the chemistry or the emotional state, we have an imperfect glimpse. The patient sitting before me brings with him or her not only chemistry, but also family, relationships, emotions, and character. The distinctions we bring to a hospital in terms of mind and body are abstractions that we make. The patient is still a whole person, and to help him or her get better, ideally we would deal with all of these aspects, the balance of a person's life. The essence of this more holistic paradigm of balance is captured in the words of the ancient Sufi teaching, "You think because you understand one, you must understand two, because one and one makes two. But you must also understand and." When we begin to apply this paradigm on a personal basis, we see that balance in our lives isn't a running between compartments, it's a dynamic equilibrium. It's all parts working synergistically in a highly interrelated whole. Balance isn't either or, it's and. What an incredible difference this makes in our lives. The personality ethic literature of the past 70 years would have us believe that success in some roles means putting on a different personality, like putting on a sweater or a pair of shoes. It creates fragmentation, duplicity. But the reality is that the same person who gets up, showers, and eats breakfast in the morning is also the person who interacts with clients at the office, makes presentations to the board, coaches the Little League team, cleans out the garage, and goes to church. Whatever we are, we bring to every role in our life. And what's true of character is also, to a large extent, of competence. Although there are some specific competencies attached to each role, true North principles empower us with competencies basic to every role, creating a powerful synergy among roles. Rebecca: I remember when Roger was in graduate school and I was at home with small children. As we talked in the evenings about what he was working on in his classes, it became more and more apparent to us that the same principles that worked in a business setting could be applied in the leadership and management of a home. It was thrilling to discover that the principles of empowerment that developed responsible, competent employees could be translated to empower 3- and 4-year-old children to clean their rooms. We also found that many of the principles that created strong, positive relationships in the family could be applied with significant results in a business setting. We realized that trust was the foundation for effective corporate synergy. Integrity was essential to lasting corporate influence. It seemed that once we focused on principles, our different roles were no longer compartments that segmented and separated our lives. They became avenues of application for universal principles. It became an exciting challenge to see how many ways we could apply the same principles in the different arenas of our lives. This inter-role synergy saves incredible problem-solving time and energy. A principle such as proactivity, accepting personal responsibility for your own life, is just as empowering in dealing with a disgruntled spouse or a rebellious teenager as it is in dealing with an irate customer, a demanding boss, or a frustrated direct report. Empathy, seeking first to understand, creates the same kind of trust and empowerment in work teams as it does in friendships, families, and community service organizations. This synergy empowers us to look at our roles with a MacGyver mentality. We can think in terms of fulfilling a personal development goal to exercise and a parenting goal to build a relationship with a teenage daughter by taking that daughter out for a game of tennis. If we need to inspect a factory and train a new assistant, we can see inspecting the factory together as a way to train that assistant. Understanding this synergy helps us to transcend either-or dichotomies. A woman who chooses to have children and to be with them can transcend the painful Chronos mentality dichotomy of children or career. She becomes energized by the vision of her mothering role as a significant contribution to society. She develops character and competence that empower her to fulfill other roles as well. Rebecca. I'm often troubled by the stigma attached to women who choose to focus their time and effort primarily on motherhood. It is as if society somehow deems it less valuable to raise competent children than to raise the profit on a company's product line. A woman who chooses to focus on motherhood and does so out of a clear sense of her own personal vision becomes truly energized in her role. She recognizes the value of her efforts in shaping the characters of future leaders in society. And in the process, she develops competence and character to fulfill other roles. Perhaps a second career or another degree are in the plans, but that doesn't distract from the task at hand. It's not a matter of capacity, but of chosen contribution. There are women who choose motherhood for a season who don't earn the character and competence because they aren't deeply connected to a vision of the role and don't fully apply their creative energy to it. But those who do are empowered to fulfill other roles with excellence. The transcendence of either-or thinking is becoming critical for our contemporary organizations. In a segmented society that's sometimes slow to appreciate and translate the skills of the competent home manager, man or woman, to the job market, it is society itself that suffers. Current research indicates that the so-called feminine attributes, well exercised in parenting, are the critical capacities required to effectively manage in the emerging democratic cultures of our organizations. But why are we just coming to this realization? In the 5th century BC, Xenophon records that Nicomedes, a professional soldier, was disgruntled when another man, with no more to recommend him than his excellence in managing a home and chorus, was selected to be a general instead of himself. In response, Socrates observed that over whatever a man may preside, he will, if he knows what he needs and is able to provide it, be a good president, whether he have the direction of a chorus, a family, a city, or an army. Do not, therefore, despise men skillful in managing a household, for the conduct of private affairs differs from that of public concerns only in magnitude. When we see our roles as segmented parts of life, we develop a scarcity chronos mentality. There's only so much time. Spending it in one role means we can't spend it in another. It's win-lose. One role wins, the other roles lose. We're in competition with ourselves. We get involved in a self-fulfilling prophecy and go about gathering evidence to justify the position we find ourselves in. But principles empower us with an abundance mentality. There's more of everything. We can think win-win with all the roles in our lives to see them as parts of a highly interrelated whole. 3 paradigms that nurture balance. Most of us, when going through the Quadrant 2 organizing process for the first time, look at roles as a great way to organize information and tasks. While we receive some benefit from that new perspective, we benefit far more by gaining a deeper understanding of our roles that empowers us to create synergy and balance in our lives. We'd like to suggest 3 fundamental paradigms that create that deeper understanding. 1. Our natural roles grow out of our mission. Where do we get our roles? If we haven't paid the price to work them out in our deep inner life, they're probably a combination of feelings we have about ourselves and the social mirror. But if we have paid the price, our roles are like the branches of a living tree. They grow naturally out of a common trunk, our mission, the unique fulfillment of our needs and capacities, and common roots, the principles that give sustenance and life. Our roles become the channels through which we live, love, learn, and leave a legacy. This deep connection with vision gives passion and energy to our roles. For example, when parents begin to detect the powerful uniqueness of their role, their singular opportunity to enhance the growth and development of a new life, and the generative force that new life represents in affecting future generations, they become energized and liberated to transcend bad scripts, old baggage, the weaknesses of prior generations. Instead of passing them on, they change them. They become transition instead of transmission figures. A sense of legacy empowers them to deal with themselves in transformational ways rather than transactional ways. On the other hand, roles that are truncated from needs, principles, and mission, a work role that has no meaning except economic security, a relationship based on illusion instead of principle, or community service based on the expectations of others instead of inner conviction, have no sustaining power because they don't tap into that deep burning yes. Each role is vitally important. Success in one role can't justify failure in another. Business success can't justify failure in a marriage. Success in the community can't justify failure as a parent. Success or failure in any role contributes to the quality of every other role and life as a whole. Without this big picture awareness of our roles, we can easily become consumed by some roles to the neglect of others. That's why we take the time in the Quadrant 2 organizing process each week to write down our roles. As one busy executive expressed, "In the last 17 years of being a business executive, I've taken a lot of people out to lunch. But as I wrote out my roles and came to husband, I realized that I hadn't been taking my own wife out to lunch, and my relationship with her is one of the most important relationships in my life." So, as a result of weekly organizing, we started doing that, and it's brought us much closer. Our communication has increased, which has led me to discover other ways I can be a better husband. As I review my role as a husband each week, I believe I'm doing a much better job. Writing our roles each week keeps them in our awareness and helps us pay attention to all the important dimensions of our life. But that does not necessarily mean that we set a goal in every role every week. Nor does it mean that our roles are necessarily the same each week or that we address all roles every week. The balance of nature itself teaches us the principle of times and seasons. There are times in our lives when imbalance is balance, when a short-term focus contributes to our overall mission in life. A mother with a new baby, for example, spends an incredible number of hours loving, serving, and caring for that baby. For a time, her life seems out of balance, but to look at life from the aeon perspective, to realize that balance is living, loving, learning, and leaving a legacy over a lifetime, gives context and meaning to her seasonal imbalance. Other times when short-term imbalance creates long-term balance might include involvement in a meaningful project of contribution, caring for an elderly parent, or starting a new business. There are seasons when intense investment can make the difference between success and failure, between mediocrity and excellence, and that investment, or lack of it, has tremendous implications for others down the road, for spouse, children, employees, associates, the community as a whole. During times of chosen imbalance, we may feel more comfortable listing only one or two roles during weekly organizing. Some feel this frees them for greater focus, others feel a sense of context in having their roles in front of them, even though they don't set goals in each one. The vital factor in any choice concerning balance in our lives is a deep connection with our inner voice of conscience. Because we live in an environment inundated by human doing more than human being, it's easy to get caught up in imbalance to the point that it no longer reflects mission or principles. Rather than being mission-driven, we become urgency-driven. As Carol Orsborn, founder of Overachievers Anonymous, points out, there are periods when producing at the outer reaches of endurance and ability for an extended period of time is necessary and even nurturing. I do not, for instance, regret the long hours I invested in the early years of building our business. I have no problem burning the midnight oil while driven by inspiration to capture some exciting new thought for this book. The real problem comes, however, when I or any of us go into unconscious overdrive, forgetting to shift back out of high gear after such a bout with adrenaline has served its purpose. Only as we keep an open communication with our deep inner life will we have the wisdom to make effective choices. As psychologist Dr. Barbara Killinger observes, wisdom comes from balance. Workaholics are very intelligent, interesting, often witty and charming people, but they lack this inner wisdom. The crises in their lives attest to this. Good judgment comes when your logical and rational thoughts and ideas are supported by a gut reaction that the decision feels right, and you can live comfortably with the consequences of your action. Inner wisdom goes even farther, because the decision not only feels right, but it also fits in with your values and beliefs. Something deep inside you can answer yes. We've known people with incredible careers who have walked away from them for a time to focus on a son or daughter who was on drugs. We've seen people with 6- and 7-figure incomes retire early to coach a neighborhood soccer team. We've seen people marshal tremendous energy and support from the family and friends who had to do without them, as they've spent incredible time and energy on projects they felt would contribute to humanity as a whole. And these people all felt wonderful about their choices. They were mission-driven. They were firmly connected to their deep inner lives. One woman who seems to have created this inner connection shares this experience. I sit on a board of a residence for pregnant teenagers. It's a wonderful organization, very dear to my heart. I chaired the Public Relations Committee for some time. We had a hiatus of 2 months, during which I tried to get a handle on my new business. I also spent some important time with my family. Everybody took for granted that I would be heading up the board again, but I had to say, no, I'm not going to serve on the committee this year. I don't want to build your expectations and then not be able to fulfill them. It was painful. I discovered the anchor is trusting myself a lot more and knowing that I can walk away from situations and it's okay. Realizing that has been liberating. I've learned to say no in deference to a larger yes in my life. I get out of sync with it and fall back into some old habits sometimes. There are rushes, there are work crunches that just won't wait. But with the internal knowledge and comfort that I'm anchored, I can readjust quickly and come back into balance. When following our inner voice leads us into times of short-term imbalance, we can involve others whose lives are affected by the focus and work out an interdependent balance together. Rebecca. As we considered working on this book, I felt very uncomfortable about the imbalance I thought it would create in my life. Although I've been involved in a number of community service efforts and in other writing projects, my family has been my major passion and area of contribution for the past 25 years. The choices I've made through the years to be there for my husband and children have been mission-driven. But I also felt a sense of passion about this work. It tied into other values and other roles that are also a vital part of my life. I thought about what I couldn't do for my family if I chose to write. I still have 3 children at home who need help with music practice and homework, transportation to lessons, nutritious meals, and a listening ear. I feel a great desire to strengthen our association and build deeper bonds with our married children living nearby. Wanting to do these things, I was feeling pain because I knew that for a time I could not do them, at least not to the extent that was important to me in my role as a mother. Roger and I worked together for a time, writing and parenting, so that we could provide for the basic needs of our children living at home, and grandparents provided wonderful help with music practice and transportation. But the real breakthrough came as we created a synergy between this project and our children's need to leave a legacy. Part of our family mission is to wisely use our time, talents, and resources to bless others. As we sat down with the children and involved them in the purpose of this book, we created a shared vision that tapped into the power of that part of our mission. They became excited and willing to help in whatever way they could. Several of our married children became involved in the project itself. Others helped out in other ways. One Saturday, several of them and their spouses showed up to help with outdoor projects that had been preempted by our writing. We had to make sacrifices, but the children were willing to work together and help in countless ways that made the project possible. Instead of taking us away from our family, in many ways it's brought us closer. It's something we've done together, and we've all grown in the process.